Death is not the end of you because you are not the sort of thing that ends. What ends are ideas, shapes in the mind, names in a ledger, a mask you mistake for a face. What ends is the story you've been telling about a separate me sealed off from the wind and the waves. But the wind does not end when a gust subsides, nor the ocean when a wave bows out upon the shore. The gust is wind, the wave is ocean. When their particular form relaxes, the reality that moved as them remains, fresh and unconfined. So the fear of death, properly seen, is the tremor that passes through the personality when it suspects that it is only a costume in the grand performance of the cosmos. And because that costume is worn day after day, lacquered with habits, praised and scolded, insured and defended, the thought of its falling away feels like ruin. Yet ruin is a word the chrysalis might use to describe a butterfly. To fear death is to be on guard against life itself. For life is a continual dying. You breathe out the past to make room for the present. You let go of each heartbeat the moment it arrives. Every taste dissolves. Every sound vanishes into silence. Every note in the melody survives by relinquishing its place to the next. If you insist that the note should continue indefinitely, you have no music, only a steady drone. Music lives by dying, so do you. When you clutch, you strangle the tune you meant to save. Think of a child holding his breath, determined not to lose what he possesses, the air in his lungs, only to discover that possession as such suffocates. So he must surrender, and in surrender he receives all over again. The fear of death is that childish clench, scaled up to the full theater of a lifetime. We learn to clutch at roles and possessions and even virtues as if stability were the purpose of existence. But life is not a bank account. It is a dance, the purpose of dance. He is not to arrive at a point on the floor, but to enjoy every step along the way. To ask life for permanence is like asking a melody to end on the first note and never depart from it. What you truly want when you say you want to live forever is not duration but depth, not more time but more present. And depth appears when you stop defending yourself against change, when you stop bracing against the dissolving of the moment, when you realize that your nature is change, that what you are is the flow. You may protest, but I don't want to disappear. Of course you don't. No wave wants to think itself a merely passing wrinkle. Yet what is frightened here? Only the image in memory, the crystallized portrait, the idea of yourself in the mind. And ideas are useful servants but miserable masters. They cannot love or taste or weep. They can only reference what's gone. The actual living you, this sparkle of awareness, this aliveness humming behind the eyes, has never been touched by yesterday's photograph. So when we speak of death, we are not speaking of oblivion swallowing a reality. We are speaking of the mask being gently removed by the same actor who put it on. The audience applauds, the lights change, and the play moves to its next scene. The fear of death is the fear that the house lights will reveal an empty stage. But life whispers again and again that the stage is the world and the world is alive, that the audience and the actors are the same consciousness applauding itself in different costumes. Let us look more closely at how this fear hides within the ordinary rhythm of days. We imagine ourselves to be separate observers, perched like lonely birds outside the forest of experience, peering in. The mind, clever as a magician, draws a chalk circle on the ground and says, inside this mark, I, outside, everything else. But this chalk circle is traced on water. Your skin is not a border, it is a bridge. This body exchanges air with the trees, heat with the sunlight, minerals with the soil. You do not live in the universe. You are the universe wearing a form as intimate as a whisper. What we call my life is a local pattern of the total movement, just as a whirlpool is a local pattern of the river. If you insist that the whirlpool be immortal, you will fight the river. You will try to freeze the stream. And this is precisely the anxiety that stalks so many steps, the attempt to freeze what is essentially fluid. When you know yourself as process, death becomes a feature of your continuity rather than a threat to it. The autumn leaf trembles as it lets go, but in letting go it returns to the soil that nourished the root, that will once again become leaf. So you see, endings are disguises. They are entrances from the other side. If you stand too near the costume, you swear by its mask. If you step back, you recognize the actor. Fear narrows your view to a single prop and a single line. Understanding lifts the curtain. There is a paradox that begins to glimmer when you attend to the actual texture of experience. You cannot hold on to the present, and yet the present is all there is. Every attempt to seize it converts it into memory, and memory is a leaf pressed in a book, beautiful but not alive. The very effort to secure your existence by pinning it to a definition robs it of its nectar. So the fear of death drives a frenzy of cataloguing, a mania of achievement, of carving one's initials into every tree as if the forest must carry proof of your being. But the forest has another proof, your breath moving with its leaves, your heart keeping time with its birds. You do not need to persist as a monument because you persist as the movement itself. Observe your sensations. What is it exactly that you fear will end? The taste of tea fades, replaced by the coolness of air in the throat. The sound of a friend's laughter dissolves into the soft hum of a distant street. Thoughts arise and pass like fish, rising to the surface and vanishing again. If you inquire honestly, you will not find a permanent observer standing apart and watching these come and go. You will find only the coming and going, a seamless field of appearing, shimmering with awareness. The fear of death is born from the illusion that there must be a separate watcher who could be switched off like a lamp. But there is no lamp, there is only the light, and the light changes its shapes. Consider sleep and waking. Each night you release the tight knot of identity and the world dissolves. Each morning the world reappears, and so do you. You do not doubt that the tree outside your window will reform in the dawn. Why doubt that life can reform in larger cycles than a day? The sun dies with every sunset and returns as sunrise, and the world does not keep a ledger of continuity for the sky. The ledger is a device for merchants. Existence operates by rhythms, but the mind bargains. It says, "Give me security, I will pay with freedom." It wants an arrangement with life in which nothing unpredictable happens, in which change is permitted only by appointment. And because life will not agree to terms, the mind develops vigilance as a posture. We call it responsibility, prudence, realism. These are fine garments for the marketplace. They are not the skin of the soul. Beneath them, something yearns not for safety, but for truth. And the truth is that the wave is the sea, that what you deeply are cannot be harmed by the transformations of its own movement. To see this is not to adopt a belief. It is to relax a contraction. It is to let the heartbeat beat without a contract, to let the breath breathe without a pledge, to let experience be born and die and be born again in the space that you are. When fear insists, "But what about the end, the final curtain?" Remind it that curtains close to allow the set to change. You are not imprisoned in an act. You are invited to the whole play. The costume you wear will be folded. The actor does not perish with the cloth. Here, the fear of death softens into a strange gratitude. Because each scene fades, you are free to love it fully. The blossom does not apologize for falling. It completes the story of its color by resting on the earth. Now let us translate this insight into daily life, not as a rule book, but as a way of walking. Begin with the breath. The breath teaches surrender with every cycle. Notice the tiny fear in the body that resists the out-breath, as if exhaling were a loss. Then notice the generosity of the next in-breath arriving of its own accord. You are not making breathing happen. You are witnessing a gift. Practice saying softly within, "Let it go," to let it come. This phrase is not a spell, but a reminder that every receiving involves a releasing. If you can trust this with breath, you can trust it with time, with work, with love. Attend to endings on purpose. Finish your cup of tea and watch the last drop shine and vanish, and let that small vanishing warm you to the larger ones. Close a book without the furtive hope that there will be no last page. When a day ends, step outside for a moment, even onto a balcony or a doorstep, and sense how the world draws a quiet veil over its face. Bow to the day. The bow is the body's way of saying yes to change. If you practice consenting to small deaths, the end of a conversation, the quiet after laughter, the fading of a song, you educate the soul to greet the larger transformations with grace. Loosen your schedule, not to be idle, but to be alive. Life is not impressed by your crowded calendar. It listens for the spaces where it may sing. Leave an hour without a plan, and let your feet discover where they want to go. You may find yourself walking a familiar street as if for the first time, or sitting by a window being illuminated by ordinary light. In such spaces, fear finds it harder to build fortresses because presence renders fortifications irrelevant. The more you pack into a day, the more the mind imagines that continuity equals control. But continuity is the river, not a chain. In relationships, practice the art of allowing others to change. The fear of death often hides as the fear of someone becoming different. We clutch at our images of loved ones as we clutch at our image of ourselves, demanding that no one grow beyond the role we have assigned. This is a kind of embalming, a psychological mummification performed in the name of love. True affection grants the freedom to transform. When someone you cherish shifts, let curiosity lead rather than suspicion. Ask not what happened to the person I knew, but who is blossoming here now? In that question, fear loosens and life steps forward. Meet pain without the added insult of resistance. Pain is a messenger. Suffering is the quarrel with the message. When grief arrives, do not turn away as if it were a failure of life. Grief is how love honors change. Sit with it as you would sit with a friend who speaks an uncomfortable truth. If tears come, they are rivers doing their old sacred work of carrying weight back to the sea. The fear of death sells you the superstition that feeling deeply will drown you. But feeling deeply is swimming. Drowning happens when you pretend you have no body. Rehearse generosity. Give things away that you secretly worry you cannot lose. A book you have hoarded, a jacket you keep for some day, your certainty in an argument. Notice that each gift is a tiny rehearsal for the great opening of the hand. Each time you let go, the hand learns it was never a cage, but a wing. This is not moralism. It is practical training in the physics of spirit. What you cling to grows heavy. What you share grows light. Create rituals of return. At dusk, light a candle and watch it for a minute. The flame wastes nothing by burning. It fulfills itself. Say, this day has burned well, even if it bent and faltered. The statement is a decision to join the flow rather than to keep a ledger. Before sleep, name 3 things that ended today and bless them. Then name 3 things that began, however small. You will discover that your life is a fabric woven of continuous beginnings and endings, seamless as breath. When fear murmurs that death will take everything, remind it gently that life has been giving everything away since the first moment and is no poorer for it. The tree gives shade and fruit and leaves, and it does not file a complaint when winter bears its branches. It trusts the cycle because it is the cycle. So with you. Practice trusting in small ways until trust becomes your atmosphere. This is not a doctrine, but a posture, not a conclusion, but a dance step. Having practiced in the grain of the day, we can speak of awakening, not as an achievement, but as a shift in perspective, like seeing the vase that was once 2 faces or the 2 faces that were once a vase. Awakening is the relaxation of the imaginary boundary between yourself and the world. It is discovering that the watcher and the watched are one movement, that the sense of I is a wave cresting on the sea of awareness, beautiful, brief, continuous with the depth beneath. In this relaxation, the fear of death evaporates like mist at noon, not because the body will not end, but because what you truly are is not confined to the body any more than music is confined to an instrument. The instrument rests, the music plays on, taking up new forms. What becomes of the ego? Nothing tragic. It finds its rightful place as a useful convention, like a name in a conversation. You continue to use I and you as musicians use notes and rests, without mistaking either for the whole, the ka. Ego is a tool that fails only when it tries to be a fortress. When it relaxes, attention opens, and you experience a clarity that is not brittle and a peace that is not anesthetic. This peace is not the absence of storms, but the recognition that the storm and the sky are not two. Meaning, then, is not an object to be possessed, but a quality of participation. You do not interrogate life from the outside, you converse with it from within. The old anxiety that you must manufacture significance subsides, for significance is the taste of being in tune. A dancer does not ask what the dance means. The dance is the meaning discovered as she moves. So with your existence, your answer to the riddle is your way of moving through it, with attention, with kindness, with a willingness to be surprised. Spiritual freedom is the uncoiling of the fist in the heart. It is the end of your career as a guard posted at the gates of life. You do not need to bully the universe into granting you survival. You need to recognize that you are the universe. Momentarily this, soon that, always itself. When anger rises, you see it as weather and let it pass. When joy swells, you let it sing without demanding an encore. You become porous. The world moves through you as wind through tall grass. This is not detachment, but intimacy. You are not standing aloof on a hill. You are kneeling in the garden, fingers in the soil, laughing at the earthworms and the rain. And then, because every true teaching is a kind of music, we will end in silence. But before silence, let us rest in a few last images that have followed us like friendly dogs along the path. Imagine a shoreline at dusk. The tide comes in with the soft insistence of a drumbeat older than memory. Each wave reaches, gleams, and falls back, leaving a dark mirror on the sand that reflects a sky just beginning to reveal its stars. You are both wave and water, both gleam and mirror. Your reaching does not exhaust the sea. Your falling back is not a failure. It is the rhythm by which the stars are invited to appear. Now close the eyes of the mind and feel the body breathing. Feel how the breath is not pushed but received, as if the world were breathing you. Let the next out-breath carry with it a tiny string tied to your need to control the end. Let it go out with the breath and dissolve like salt in a vast ocean. Rest in the space that opens. In that space, ask, not with words, but with the listening of the whole being, whether you have ever been separate from what is. The answer does not come as a sentence. It arrives as a loosening, a warmth, the sense that the floor has become a friend. If fear returns, as it does, welcome it as you would a guest who has lost his way. Offer it tea. Let it sit by the window and look out with you at the moving world. Show it the people passing, each a universe of beginnings and endings. Show it the trees, each a calendar without dates. Show it the cloud that just now scattered and the light that came through. Say to fear, you may stay as long as you like, but you cannot run the house. Notice how, relieved of its duties, fear grows quiet and eventually decides to step out for a walk. Finally, remember, the world is not a problem to be solved, but a song to be sung. Your life is the verse the universe is presently giving voice to through your mouth, your hands, your eyes. Sing it while it is here, fully, tenderly, wildly, if you must. When the verse is complete, the song does not stop. It turns the page and continues in a key you do not yet know. Trust this, bow to it, and as you rise from the bow, feel how the heart is already keeping time with something vast and gentle. Let that rhythm guide your steps. Walk on,